Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Racha Kudash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And we've got a few headlines here. Gonna get through it. Starting with the HV, right? The HV, which is an abbreviation for the name of this thing you see on the screen. Which there's been mention, now officially about cases in the United States. And so it says here, I'll read a little bit of this, but it says as HV cases rise, U.S. officials say risk to public very, very low. Now, the question first is, how is it that they said something similar about the C vid when it first came out, and then it turned out to be something different, and by the time it had reached its peak, they were already saying something different, right? So how is it that they're able to do that? And it lies in the wording they use when they talk about these things, right? They're able to fall back on the excuse that is what the data showed at the time. That is what the science showed at the time. And even though common sense and reasoning might sometimes in these cases beg to differ, they're able to then turn around and say, well, at the time, this is what we had and this is what it showed. And that's why we were able to say this, that, and the third. But now things have changed. So reading here, it says a total of 11 HV cases have been confirmed as of Tuesday morning, with global health officials warning that the number could rise. The risk to the public from an illness called the HV is low, a U.S. official said on May 11th. Let me be crystal clear. The risk of HV to the general public remains very, very low. Dr. Brian Christine, Assistant Secretary of Health and head of the U.S. Public Health Service, told reporters during a briefing. So it says here the Centers for Disease, and once again, it's more often you see especially when it's dealing with like a disease or some new illness that is like spreading, is more often that you hear the initial calm for the public, which is it's not that contagious or it's not that deadly or just whatever narrative you hear there. Okay, it's more likely you see that or more often than for them to come out from the jump right out the gate and tell you, oh, this is the most dangerous thing that's ever been out there, because they know that it's a process. And they've also sort of like seen and observed. They said that they wrote playbooks on the whole C-19, right, and all their findings and things they could have done better, controlling the narrative, controlling media, and so on and so forth. So continuing here, it says the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention had said in a May 8th health alert to doctors and health departments that doctors should be aware that imported HV cases were possible, but that the risk of broad spread to the United States is considered extremely unlikely at this time. At this time, that's the key part right there. At this time. So going back to what I mentioned before, when they are saying, oh, well, we're following the data, we're following, the signs and the science, they can always fall back and say, well, it has changed. Now the data is showing us this. Now the science is telling us this. But before that wasn't the case. That's why we said it was not likely, but now it is mutated. So when you're dealing with something that you can easily, use as an excuse to say like, well, it's a fluid situation, it's not set in stone, then it's much easier to be able to make these kinds of claims that others that are not, that don't look deeply into it might fall for it. Right? And then it catches them off guard. Let's see if there's anything else more on here. Yeah, they said an American cruise ship passenger who tested positive on one test and negative on another was transported early Monday to the biocontainment unit at the University of Nebraska Medical Center. And then I think there were a few others that they took them to a quarantine unit. Okay, and also another one who was sent to another quarantine facility over there. So now they claim in here that once they've gone about 2, 3 or so some amount of days without showing any symptoms, then they're free to go. But I mean, there's a chance that maybe they're not, right? So it doesn't seem like just anybody has access to those facilities anyway. So moving on to the next one here. Now this, if anybody falls for it, is just gonna be, I mean, it's just hysterical at this point, right? Now it says, watch lockdown architect Deborah Birx smirks over PCR testing for HV. Now this is the same demon that came out and was going to tell you here in this first intro paragraph. The former White House CV response coordinator who helped shape a 6-foot rule, right? 6 feet, extended lockdowns, school closures, and 15 days to slow the spread, right? That somehow became much longer, is once again on television recommending widespread PCR testing, this time for HV. I wonder if they're going to throw Fauci's rat ass back on television as well. Okay, so let's listen to what she's saying over here. Let's see.
What more do we know about the Andes strain? How it might differ from the other strains?
So the Andes strain is the only strain where we have mapped human-to-human transmission. And I caution people, because when we say human-to-human transmission, we're talking about people who develop symptoms. But because we're not testing populations with RNAs, we don't really know whether there are subclinical cases. So there could be more human-to-human transmission than we actually see. It's never good to track viruses through symptoms. We should be tracking viruses through blood tests like PCR. We've learned that with COVID. Extraordinarily helpful. Many universities were able to open and schools were able to open because they provided weekly testing, and it really prevented spread. So we know how to deal with these viruses. We just need to move into the 21st century and make testing more widely available to those who need it.
Yeah, real interesting. And anybody who actually remembers what happened there saw that as it started winding down, these people had to backtrack on the things they were saying, as people were questioning, like, hey, no, what you just said is this, but in reality, that's not the case. You said people are going to have this and that, and this immunity is better than that, and a booster here, and it's not really the case. So people started asking questions. Anyway, moving on here, UAE secretly carried out attacks on Iran, making it an active combatant. Now, this came out today, all right, on the United Arab Emirates, here saying that they apparently launched an attack on Iran. Okay, so let's read a little bit of this here. It says the UAE has become an active combatant in the Iran war, according to fresh reporting in the Wall Street Journal. Last week saw the U.S.-Iran ceasefire briefly break down, during which time the U.S. struck some Iranian coastal sites and the Iranians sent drones and missiles on several Gulf states once again. Iran also reportedly tried to attack 3 American warships carrying out Trump's Project Freedom operations. But even before this, during the intense missile exchanges of early April, before the ceasefire, the UAE also secretly attacked Iran. The United Arab Emirates has carried out military strikes on Iran, people familiar with the matter said, casting the Gulf monarch as an active combatant in the war, in which it has been Iran's biggest target. So apparently it's saying here, based on what we just read here, that as they kind of sort of hid behind the barrages of the U.S. and Israel, and then threw a couple shots in there up against Iran. At least that's what it's sounding like from here. So let's read a little bit more. As of whether the UAE was active in hitting Iran last week, this remains unknown. There's much that may yet be revealed in the future amid the current fog of war. At this moment, however, the UAE has yet to publicly disclose those prior alleged offensive attacks on the Islamic Republic. Let's read the Washington Street Journal report here. The strikes, which the UAE hasn't publicly acknowledged, have included an attack on a refinery in Iran's Lavan Island in the Persian Gulf, the people familiar with the matter said. That attack took place in early April, around the time President Trump was announcing a ceasefire in the war after a 5-week air campaign, and sparked a large fire and knocked much of its capacity offline for months. So, this report is saying apparently during the heat of that battle, the UAE, secretly launched, they blended their attacks in there, launched it against Iran. But I mean, here we are today, and it's when you read the article, I mean, it's mainly mentioning, supposedly or allegedly, or that's what they say, but they've yet to come out and confirm something like that. Okay, so we're gonna continue to watch and see. Now, this guy, Bibi Yahoo, insists Iran war to continue until uranium is physically removed. Now, for uranium to be physically removed, how do you physically remove uranium without going there physically? So that's insinuating that you're going to need to put boots on the ground to go there, confiscate it, and actually, remove it, as he's saying here. And it's also telling you that if you make a statement like this, you're basically saying, well, we don't care about a treaty unless your treaty agrees or your peace deal agrees that we can come in there and take your uranium literally or physically out of there, then the war is going to continue to go on. So that's the direction or the front Israel has been continually, they've been continually pushing for, right? Which is like, no. We don't want peace. We don't want this to stop. We want an outcome favorable to us out of this conflict, or else it's not over. And in the process of doing that is where you have the wake of, destruction that we see going on. And it's only going to get worse. So it says Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in a 60 Minutes interview, which aired Sunday, that President Trump still wants Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium removed. Trump on Monday warned that the Iran ceasefire is on massive life support. I mean, at this point, this is just theatrics, man. They just come on stage and make a couple of statements and, cause markets to jump and shift and so on. Netanyahu told CBS CBS show host Major Garrett that the military campaign had achieved a great deal, but insisted additional operations remain necessary. That's when he described there's still nuclear material, enriched uranium, that has to be taken out of Iran. There's still enrichment sites that have to be dismantled. So they're letting you know that they're not satisfied with how things are going right now. They want more. Trump on Iran. Iran told me, you are getting the nuclear dust, but you will have to
With
get
that
it.
beautiful plane right there hit them hard. We really hit them hard. And they told me, I want to just tell you this because they like to say, oh, well, maybe it wasn't that hard a hit. Iran told me very strongly, because they intend to give us the nuclear dust, as I call it. It's easier than talking about other terms because it's a term everyone knows. But the nuclear dust, which is what we hit, they told me, number one, you're getting it, but you're going to have to take it out because the site was so obliterated that there's only 1 or 2 countries in the world that could get it. It's so deep and got hit so hard that there's no way they have the equipment to move it. You and China are the only 2 countries in the world that could take it out.
So this guy, clearly you can hear what he said there. you can have it, right? You're getting the, but you have to come and get it. Really? Hey, well, so that's what you have going there on that front. Um, Now, here's a report that apparently, here it says mediator Pakistan hosted Iranian military aircraft to insulate them from U.S. attacks. Graham fuse at Islamabad. Now, I think to like later on, they came out and denied it. They basically, that's Pakistan came out and said, no, 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 they didn't actually do that. But, in a case like that, that is now, because if they were to become, say, an enemy, right? Because right now they're acting like a mediator, but if they were to play the role of an adversary, in the eyes of the U.S. or Israel, which chances are they ultimately will end up on that side anyway. You can see how that changes the dynamic, right? Because interestingly enough, those that are trying to play the role of being mediators have now become involved and embroiled in this war. CBS reports Pakistan sheltered Iranian military planes. Senator Graham, outraged, calls for re-evaluation. U.S. President blasts piece of garbage Iran response, says ceasefire on life support. Reportedly mulls renewing military action. That's all they're doing. They're planning and mulling and thinking and I might do this and threatening each other. But you know what? It's all to buy time, right? And it's done for a reason. U.S. Treasury imposes yet more sanctions. Trump mulls restarting Project Freedom in Hormuz and says forcibly retrieving nuclear dust is still on the table. Well, according to him, according to the video we just saw, the Iran said the U.S. can have it. They just got to come and get it. Iran Foreign Ministry, everything we proposed in the text was reasonable and generous. Interesting. So from one perspective, they're like, no, it wasn't just reasonable, it was also generous. The other side is like, this is complete garbage. So we'll see how that plays out. However, U.S. officials insist on their unreasonable demands. Saudi Arabia confirms Iran for its latest, condemns Iran for its latest drone attacks targeting the UAE, Qatar, and Kuwait on Sunday. Qatari LNG tanker abruptly U-turns in Hormuz choke point after earlier in weekend an initial one made it through. An unprecedented first for a Qatari tanker of the war. So you had another one that was trying to, as it seems here, trying to get through there, and they had to make that U-turn. And all the while, the world is still getting affected. Prices of goods are going up, up, up. They're being, damn. And then speaking of which, the world being affected, you also have fuel shortages, right? And soon it's going to be not just fuel shortages, but it's going to be gas shortages. So it says jet fuel shortage deepens pressure on global airlines. And we've been saying this, but it's basically crushing that free travel, as before. And when I say free, I don't mean monetarily, but you could easily in a week, you could book a freaking flight to Costa Rica, have the hotel and everything booked and ready for you, and you could go there on damn near a Monday and come back on a Friday and you're good. But now that's getting more difficult. It says Heathrow's April passenger numbers fell 5% to 6.7 million, with Middle East traffic down 50%. Transfer traffic rose 10% as travelers rerouted through Heathrow to Asia and Oceania. Airlines are facing mounting pressure from jet fuel shortages and higher oil prices. And once again, jet fuel is a very important, resource, but it's not the only thing that there's a limitation on. Fewer passengers were headed to Heathrow Airport in April as the war in the Middle East keeps travelers grounded. See what else we have here. Right, and then there was the mention of the basically like the ending of Spirit Airlines, right? Because of how this turmoil affected them, and they basically had to go under, right? Collapsed. Says jet fuel crisis worse than the vid. Growing anxieties around the jet fuel shortage caused by the Iran war have rocked the travel industry, Tony Fernandez, chief executive of AirAsia, said last week. I thought I'd seen it all with the sea, but haven't seen jet fuel go up almost 3 times. This is much worse. And so that realization is starting to set into people's minds, and they turn around and, try to go to their governments for solutions, and they'll hear here in the West, right, in America, that, oh, the price is going to come back down, right? When this war is over, right? When this war is over, the price is going to come skyrocketing back down. But when will this war or conflict be over? That's the question right there, because by the time that it's so-called over, like, he's saying it as though things are just they're gonna find some way, right, to where things just either calm down or fall into place, and now prices are dropping and everything is all good. But what happens if the opposite takes place and things heat up more and more and more? Yeah, people are feeling that. They are feeling that. So real quick, this is the book of Ezekiel chapter 2 verse 8. It says, but thou, son of man, hear what I say unto thee. Be not thou rebellious like that rebellious house. Open thy mouth and eat that I give thee, which is a representation of the scriptures. And when I looked, behold, an hand was sent unto me, and lo, a roll of a book was therein. And he spread it before me, and it was written without, or within and without, meaning on the front side and the back side. And there was written therein lamentations and mourning and woe. You see that? When you lament and you mourn, you're not in a good state. But it was written this way because we are now in the times of the lamentations and the mournings and the woeful parts of the scriptures of prophecy. All right, we're now at that point. That's why you're seeing all these things that are happening on the face of the earth. And watch how people are what it seems like adjusting to it, but really it's not, right? It's not. They think some people think it's normal, and yeah, it will come down in a few, but they're not looking ahead. Okay, they're looking at the here and now. They're listening to the pseudo promises that they're told by their governments, and they're not looking ahead. Because if they were to, they would see the prophecies on lamentation and mourning and woe that's to come. So with that, I'm going to end it here. Lord willing, that was edifying and informative to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rachakudash.